A Musical Life with collaborative pianist and blogger ChrisFoley. Collaborative pianist, teacher, and vocal coach ChrisFoley is the author of CollaborativePiano.com, one of the most popular classical music blogs that turns 10 years old in November 2015. What is collaborative piano? Great question. It happens to be the type of piano playing that both Chris and I specialize in, but I'll let Chris answer that question himself. This episode of A Musical Life is brought to you by Rocket French, the award-winning language learning course used by over 1 million people today. Learn the language of some of the greatest art song composers who ever lived, Debussy, Fauré, Ravel, and gain a deeper insight into the meaning behind their music. Visit amusicallife.com/French to start your free trial lessons today. That's amusicallife.com/French. This episode is also brought to you by SiteGround. When I set out to co-found my company AirTurn, we had to build a website, and to do that, we needed a web host. We tried a number of them, but ended up using SiteGround thanks to their speed, reliability, and incredible customer support. So, when it came time to start this podcast, yep, you guessed it, I went with SiteGround again. So if you're interested in building a website or a blog that's fast, easy, and powerful, I highly recommend SiteGround. Go to amusicallife.com/website to learn more. Welcome to A Musical Life. I'm Hugh Sung. ChrisFoley and I have known each other virtually for many years, but we've never actually spoken directly until this interview. So it's a real delight for me to introduce Chris and to get to know him better. Oh, and once again, happy 10th birthday to Chris's blog, CollaborativePiano.com. What an incredible accomplishment and amazing resource for classical music and collaborative pianists worldwide. Before we get started, just a bit of news to share. We've just hit the new and newsworthy list on the iTunes podcast directory in the music category. Thanks to everyone for their support. You can leave a review in iTunes by going to amusicallife.com/review. I'd really appreciate that. To celebrate the launch of this show, we have a special contest running on Facebook. Go to amusicallife.com/contest and enter your email address to join our family. Each week, for the next 8 weeks or so, we'll select a winner for a special prize. I'll announce this week's winner in our next episode. And everyone who signs up will automatically get a free MP3 of my performance of Clair de Lune by Claude Debussy. So I hope you enjoy that as my special thank you gift for signing up. Now, let's get started with my interview with ChrisFoley. Chris, thank you so much for being on the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, Hugh, thank you for asking me. I'm such an honor to once again be able to talk to you and get in touch with and talk about all sorts of interesting things.
Yeah, I think we've only been in correspondence via email for all the years that we've known each other. We've never actually talked directly like this.
That's true. We've always either been like chatting or email or blog comments.
So it's so nice to have you here and to get to know you in this format.
For sure. I'm looking forward to your questions and fire away.
All right. So first question that comes to mind. What does it mean to be a collaborative pianist, and how is that different from being a regular pianist?
It's not really different. It's just the scope of activities that we do. Like a lot of people think, like, is it a different instrument? Or is there something special about what you do?
Right.
But in reality, the whole art of collaborative piano is not just working as a soloist, but working with other musicians, working with the chamber music, with art song, opera, encompassing teaching. It's just a whole much wider variety of things that you can do.
It's really, I guess, the art of playing with other people, isn't it?
For sure, and there's a lot of compromise involved and a lot of communication skills that a lot of people aren't totally comfortable with as solo pianists. But the reality of it today is that if you want to make a living as a pianist, you have to be able to work with other people.
Yeah, so I guess this is differentiated from the solo pianists who play a concerto as a soloist. Is that right?
It's the same skill set. It's completely the same. And in fact, I mean, I've played concertos before, and it's a lot of fun. But being a collaborative pianist means that you have to re-envision yourself working in different environments and in different contexts and situations. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about today about the different experiences I've had to really can really encapsulate that in terms of being in a completely different environment, for example,
Mm.
like being on a TV show
Uh-huh.
and figuring out the skills to to do well at that.
Yeah, it's funny. I hear pianists, and I can almost invariably tell which of them have had collaborative piano experience and which of them have not. I think this applies more towards the students, not really the professionals, but the
Yeah.
students that I work with. I'll listen to a pianist, and their sound is a bit monotone. They sound like they play the piano. But when I hear a
Right.
collaborative pianist playing, who's had a lot of experience, I hear far more beyond just the piano. I hear other instruments. I hear a singing line, a sensitivity. They just seem to have a much wider sound palette many times than your stock solo pianist. I'm going to get in trouble for saying that.
No, I think this is something that everyone can benefit from because what listeners have to realize is that being a collaborative pianist, not every time am I trying to actually sound like a piano. When
Yeah.
I'm playing an orchestral reduction or when I'm playing an opera score, I need to bring alive the whole experience of the orchestra and
Mm.
its grandeur and transcended sounds and different instrument groups, and that's part of the skills of being a collaborative pianist. But I don't think it's just a special niche thing for collaborative pianists. I think that's something that every pianist can learn. Because just think of how you could play Brahms or Schubert
Mm.
if
Mhm.
you're aware of the different possibilities of those genres.
Oh, that's so well put. So, Chris, please tell me a little bit about your early music training. I know there was an interesting story that I heard in one of your interviews recently where you were 5 years old and heard live music for the first time. Tell us a little bit about your early lessons, how you got started getting trained as a musician.
Oh, for sure. My origin story. I mean, I started when I was five. I loved it. I didn't always love it as much, but it's just something I kept with. And
Mhm.
a lot of people don't know this, but I was also a violist. I played viola for eight
Oh, how
years.
cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I wasn't very good at playing in tune, and but there was I had a lot of experience playing in orchestras, and I think that's something that I use now because I mean I played all four Brahms symphonies, a
Oh,
couple of
wow.
Beethovens, Bruckner 4 and 7, Bartok Concerto for Orchestra, and tons of overtures, a lot of Mozart symphonies, concerto parts. I mean in the orchestra, and that's something that really informed the way that I approached the piano. Like since I had been in the middle of the orchestra and experienced what it was to hear all those sounds from the middle.
That is so cool. Wow.
Although
Yeah.
I don't think I was really career violist material, but at the same time, it's something that I was able to bring with me into the piano world. I also
That
played flute in high school for a few years, but that wasn't as serious. I had a jaw operation because I had an overbite when I was younger. So I
mm.
lost about when I was younger. I lost a significant amount of feeling in the left side of my lip.
Oh
So that
my.
just killed my embouchure.
Oh
So
no.
it had no other ill effects, but that meant that my career as a flautist was ended
Mm.
abruptly.
I am so jealous of you for having such a wide and varied musical education experience. It's incredible.
For sure, but at the same time, I realized when I was in high school that I couldn't go on doing everything. It was
Mm.
just nuts. And in high school, I discovered composing, and I
Ah.
realized that I love contemporary music. I mean, from
Mhm.
a young age, and I thought writing music might be something interesting. So a lot of people don't know this about me, but in my first year at the University of British Columbia, I was a composition major, and I studied with Steve Chapman.
Oh my goodness. So what sort of things did you write?
Mostly piano music,
Hmm.
and I like working with singers, so I wrote some stuff for piano and voice. My only problem, and I realized this only as a composition major, I absolutely love the repertoire. I love
Mm.
discovering music, I love playing it, but I didn't actually like the process of writing music, which is a
Mm.
problem when you're a composition major. So after my first year of university, I made another 180 and decided to become a pianist full time and really
Wow.
specialize in that. But with the experience of having been a one-time composer, so that really brought an appreciation for the process of writing music, although it wasn't something I wanted to actually do.
Now, did you study collaborative piano right off the bat, or were you first a piano solo major?
I was a piano concentrator at UBC, which it's a great program because it allows you to do a whole variety of stuff, including taking arts electives, which I think is critical for anyone in an art
Mm.
undergraduate program.
Mhm.
But I was lucky because for my undergraduate degree, I really had two teachers. On the one hand, I studied solo repertoire with Robert Rogers,
Mhm.
who was fantastic at Beethoven, Mozart, contemporary music, romantic
Wow.
period,
Mhm.
but at the same time, I studied with Rena Sharon,
Mhm.
who's just fantastic for the art song repertoire
Ah.
and
Mhm.
chamber music. And what she really brought to me was just a real understanding of the repertoire and how it relates to poetry and how the
Mm.
entire art song repertoire is really informed by a composer's reaction to poetry.
Help us understand what exactly is art song? I mean, when we say song today, it can mean a whole variety of things, anything that you hear off, iTunes or through the radio. What exactly is art song in relationship to classical music? What makes it so unique?
There's a body of vocal music that's different from opera, which is music for the stage with
Hmm.
orchestra, and different from oratorio, which is music with vocal music with orchestra that's on the stage, not staged.
Hmm.
With art song, it's music for specifically for piano that grew up really in the end of the 18th century
Hmm.
and through with Beethoven and Schubert became a fantastic and unique genre. Then composers like Schumann, Brahms, Debussy, Fauré, they brought their own national flair to it and the
Mm.
flair of their own poetic their own language into
Mm.
the poetic meanings and the poetic approach to writing music.
And it's a huge, huge body of literature. Would you mind sharing a few examples to just give a taste of the different varieties of art song that one can experience?
For sure, if you're starting out, I mean, there's no better place to start than Schubert.
Hmm.
For example, Die Schöne Müllerin.
Das Wandern ist des Müllers Lust, das Wandern. Das Wandern ist des Müllers Lust, das Wandern. Das muss ein schlechter Müller sein, dem niemals fiel das Wandern ein. Das Wandern, das Wandern, das Wandern, das Wandern. Vom Wasser haben wir's gelernt, vom Wasser. Vom Wasser haben wir's gelernt, vom Wasser. Das hat nicht Rast bei Tag und Nacht, ist stets auf Wanderschaft bedacht. Das Wasser, das Wasser, das Wasser, das Wasser.
And some of the Schumann sets, like as well as Dichterliebe.
Im wunderschönen Monat Mai, als alle Knospen sprangen, da ist in meinem Herzen die Liebe aufgegangen.
Debussy as well, for example, Ariel Oublié. There's also some really fantastic art songs being written nowadays. For example, Jake Heggie in English is written amazing, amazing songs.
At night we dream of love, of loving and being loved, like when we were children. If we were lucky as I
Now, besides obviously working with singers and also other instrumentalists, what are some other differences about studying collaborative piano that differ from studying solo piano?
Well, it's a wider skill set than many people realize, because there's a lot of specialist courses you need to take. For example, lyric diction. If you're coaching opera or art song or any kind of vocal music, you need to be able to be familiar with the languages, and that includes German, Italian, Spanish, French, in addition to English. Russian is a good language to know, and so is Czech. A little bit of Latin as well. Don't know if I mentioned that, but being able to understand how those languages are pronounced, what the words mean, how you can have a really effective poetic approach to that language, what the flow of the language is like.
That's incredible. And so you really have to be seriously multilingual as part of the course study.
Not necessarily. You have to be a linguist. You have to know what the actual sounds are in terms of International Phonetic Alphabet, and be able to phonate and explain those sounds to singers, and to correct them on their diction too, because that's one of the things that singers really need from a coach.
Can you help us understand better? What does it mean to be a vocal coach? Do you actually have to sing or sing along with the singer? Do you have to teach them how to sing? What's involved in coaching singers as a collaborative pianist?
Oh, great question. The first thing you need to know is that a vocal coach in classical music is different than a vocal coach in pop and musical theater. In pop and musical theater, a vocal coach trains singers. In classical music, a vocal coach is different than a voice teacher. A voice teacher trains singers how to sing, like the physical act of singing. Vocal coaches have a much wider number of things they have to work on. First of all, getting singers to learn the notes really well, getting them to understand the ensemble, helping them to understand the languages they're singing, helping them to phonate the words correctly in the correct language, as well as really bringing alive the text, bringing alive operas and libretti, so that singers can be really effective on the stage when they perform, either with piano or with orchestra or in any situation.
Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding, but one of the unknown things about being a professional singer, particularly being a professional classical singer, is that the singers really can't hear their own voice because it's coming from within their own body. And that's why it's so critical to have somebody else for feedback like this. Is that correct?
Oh, it's completely correct. because you have to understand that the resonance that a singer has, what they can actually perceive inside their head, often is often will not really be the resonance that other people hear.
Mm.
And there's a great way to understand that. Just listen to yourself speak on a recording. It sounds totally different than what you yourself hear inside your own head when you speak yourself.
That's a great example, yeah.
Yeah, because often I'll hear myself recordings of myself speaking. I'll think, "What a dork! How can I talk like that?"
Oh, yeah.
But that's true for everyone that listens to themselves speak, and it's true for singers how they hear themselves sing. Because a sound that a singer might find pleasing aesthetically often is not the most technically lined up sound, and often you really need somebody out there in the room that can tell you what's working and what's not. Voice teachers are the primary people who do that to help singers build their voice. For example, the breathing, the vowel resonance, and how to build their voice, how to warm up. But coaches, in a pinch, have a lot of really wise things to say about what's working and what's not.
Well, that's a great example, great insight. I don't think many people realize how critical it is for singers to have a good relationship with a vocal coach, vocal teachers, of course, that comes with the package, but also a relationship with a good vocal coach in terms of the collaborative pianist to work with for vital feedback, because they can't even hear what they're doing directly. They have to have somebody else's ears, right?
Oh, for sure. Especially professional singers, when you're not necessarily in the conservatory environment. The really tough thing for singers once you get to a certain age is somebody is going to speak the truth. And you need somebody that, even if the truth might be a little bit blunt and not necessarily be that pleasant to hear, you need somebody to tell that if you're going to be able to keep your voice on the right track.
Now, I want to delve into your life a bit more.
So I finished graduate school in 1994 at the Eastman School, and I went to Vancouver with no work. And quickly, I was lucky. I got a job right away at the Vancouver Academy of Music as a staff pianist. I got lots of gigs in Vancouver very quickly. I got hired at the University of British Columbia. I taught there for 6 wonderful years. But at the same time in Vancouver, I got the feeling that, I was ambitious. I wanted to move on. I wanted bigger things, but Vancouver wasn't really the right place for me, although it had the best weather ever and unbelievable sushi and the beach, and I could see the ocean from my studio at the Academy. But at the same time, I had the feeling that Vancouver wasn't really the place for me. But what I had been doing in Vancouver was about 20% teaching, 80% playing. And it was great because there was so much going on in Vancouver at that time. This was the last great flowering of the CBC. Lots of recordings, lots of performances all the time. And
CBC for our American audiences?
Canadian Broadcasting Corporation.
Thank you.
Which, there's a constant fight to support classical music, but the golden years in many ways were the 90s, especially in Vancouver. There were so many broadcasts of classical music that I was delighted to take part in. So anyway, we left. My wife and I left Vancouver in 2002 and we came to Toronto, and it was pretty quick getting work, and I expected to do a little bit of teaching, ton of performing. And it worked out like that for a while, and it was great. I had some fantastic gigs, but at the same time I noticed that there were gaps in my schedule, and financially it was a bit of a pickle sometimes, because it would be feast or famine. Often I have these great gigs that paid exceptionally well for a long time, but then I wouldn't have that much, I got to a point in my life where that was just a little bit frustrating. So I thought, this happened in 2005. That's about this week. This week in 2005, I came to the realization that, I can get depressed and bitter, or I can do something about it. And I wanted to write a blog. This was in the first great early days of blog writing. And there were very few classical music blogs. There was Alex Ross's blog, Jessica Duchin's blog. There weren't that many. And this was a time when there was very little competition. If you wanted to write one, there was no social media. People went to Google for all their searches. There weren't as many sites as there were now. And a lot of organizations hadn't really understood the internet. So it was a great time to get up and get going with writing a blog. So that's what I did. And I initially wanted to write about a blog about the cool stuff that I was doing, but I thought about it a while. I talked to my brother-in-law who does a lot of human relation HR work, and he thought, why don't you just, instead of writing about yourself, why don't you write about your entire network? So I thought, that's a good idea. I could write about the entire profession, because there weren't really any good comprehensive sites about collaborative piano or accompanying at that time. There still aren't that many. And I thought, what the hell? That's what I'm going to do. So I had a bunch of articles I had pre-written, so I launched them, and it got going pretty quickly. And I was surprised and honored that so many people read it. And that really changed things for me, because I realized that my priorities were different compared to what they were before.
Now, your website is located at collaborativepiano.com.
That's it. I bought it in 2001.
How about that?
Yeah, I was still shocked that, in 2001, this was around 2000, everyone was buying up domain names, but nobody had ever bought collaborativepiano.com.
You seem to be the first in a lot of things. You seem to have this amazing sense of prescience in terms of what to jump into and being there at just the right time.
That's the tough part, and I'm not as good at it as I used to be. There are other people now that are way better at it than me. But the thing is that the internet is so fragmented in 2015 that there's so many different ways of marketing yourself, and nobody's really discovered them all yet.
Now, I want to get back to you a bit.
Yes.
We're talking about this magical year 2005, where, again, with a lot of things were changing. You were changing direction. Was this the year that you decided to focus more on becoming an educator?
That came shortly after. One of the things I found disappointing about being a freelance pianist, and I never really found a way around this, was that often I get these last-minute gigs, a couple of rehearsals, concert, and it go really well. I'll be a hero, make some good money. But at the same time, I didn't really have a part in anyone's development. I would just see the project, step in, play the concert, I'd be done. But one of the things I wanted to do is to be able to develop people from the start, which is really tough in a conservatory setting, because there often isn't the budget for anyone to do that. Budgets are so limited, both with individuals who hire pianists in universities and the schools of music themselves, that you don't really get as much of a chance to develop musicians. And that was something I really wanted to do. And at the same time, when I was the first early years of the blog, one of the things I was doing was finding all these incredible hidden gems of learning piano pedagogy and books and articles on the internet. And I got the bug, Hugh. I got the bug. I realized I want to teach piano, because I feel really strongly about playing piano, but at the same time, I want to pass it on to others.
How fantastic. We're going to touch base on that a little bit later.
Yes.
Back to 2005. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with that year.
The year that would not die. 2005.
I just see this as this really interesting epochal, pivotal moment for you. Now, you were also hired to be the collaborative pianist that year for an opera reality show on Bravo Canada TV called Bathroom Divas, which only ran for 2 seasons, but it became a sleeper hit in its second season, winning a Gemini Award. I'm assuming that's the U.S. equivalent of an Emmy Award. Is that right?
Well, it's a Canadian equivalent of an Emmy Award.
Canadian, excuse me.
Country up here.
The Canadian equivalent of the U.S. Emmy Award. I'm wondering if you could share some of your experiences working for a TV show. I mean, a TV reality show. How cool.
And that was something totally different, because I had done a lot of work in the theater before then. And one of the things about working in opera is that you're part of a set stage schedule. Everything is organized. Your time is all bundled out and budgeted. You know exactly what you're going to be doing. You're going to be rehearsing this scene for these hours. But in television, you show up at the beginning of the day, and you might not do anything for a couple of hours after that. Because one of the things with television is that, especially reality television, most of what was done on the actual show, much of what happened, most of it never appears on the final cut. Only about 10 to 15% of what actually was filmed shows up on the show.
Now, did you have to overact? Did you have to?
Oh no, I was just myself. I played for a lot of voice lessons. I coached singers. I played for all the performances and vote offs, or most of the performances and vote offs, and I wasn't one of the big stars of the show. I had a lot of behind the scenes of coaching the singers, but that didn't really show up that much. At the same time, it was really quite decent remuneration because you get paid by the hour, most of which is you're just sitting around.
Oh, that's cool.
But at the same time, when you were working, it was unbelievably intense because there was so much at stake for the singers that were on the show, because they were not career singers, they were not career musicians. They did other things. Like one worked for Canada Post, one was a country music singer, one was a jazz singer, and they were just completely out of their element. So in about 2 to 3 weeks, you had to help them to become convincing opera singers.
And this was the series. The premise of the series is that these non-professional singers would have 2 weeks, and then a winner would be selected who would get to perform for thousands of people in a special performance. Is that right?
For sure. And at the same time, it was a big. Later on, it was a hit on YouTube, but it was quite popular. And sadly, it never continued. But I was glad that it did. It was on for a couple of years because it really helped average people to understand what goes into opera singing in terms of the text and building a voice and the thrill of it and the excitement of the opera stage.
You've also done a lot of work with a really fascinating group called Tapestry Opera. Please tell me about them and what they do. They're so unique. And please tell us what they do and what you do with them.
For sure. Tapestry Opera is a company that initially started off as Tapestry Music Theater in the late 70s, started by Wayne Strongman as a choir that did contemporary music and theater type stuff. But at the same time, later on, they realized that the way things were going in Toronto in the 90s, they wanted to become an opera company. So they became Tapestry New Opera Works. Now, I think they're officially Tapestry Opera or Tapestry New Opera. But one of the things they do is create operas from the ground up. And if you remember, we talked about art song earlier and how every art song starts off as a poem. Did you know every opera starts off as a play?
Just like a movie script, yeah? Yeah,
it's called a libretto. Okay. And it's a play that's specifically adapted for opera, but it's different because it's a lot more concentrated. Whereas in important dramatic junctures in a play, you might have like a 2 or 3 minute monologue, but you can't write that same thing for a libretto just because of the speed with which language is delivered. Often you need the telescope, that same dramatic moment that would be 20, 25 lines of text. You need to telescope that into 3 or 4 lines of text for the opera stage. So that's part of the skill set that opera librettists learn. And one of their pivotal workshops is called the Composer Librettist Laboratory, where they have, can you imagine this, 4 composers, 4 writers, each of which collaborates with the other to create 16 opera scenes in 2 weeks.
You're kidding. That is so cool. I think the nickname for this, the Lib Lab, Libretto Laboratory, Lib Lab. How cool, how intense. I mean, is it wow, I can't even imagine. They must drink a lot of coffee and stay up really late.
Well, actually, the composers are the ones that stay up the latest, because once the librettist is finished, their work is done. They just sit and watch. But the way it works is that they'll have a scenario. It could be composer-driven. It could be librettist-driven. It could be performer-driven. All those scenarios exist in the operatic world. But the librettist comes up with their work first. Then they give it to the composer, who writes music for it in a very short time. Like usually you'll have 24 to 36 hours to write an operatic scene.
Wow.
And then the performers show up after that with nothing, because we have to sight read the music in the rehearsal and then perform it for a masterclass that same day.
Oh my goodness! Now there's no way they can memorize that in just one day. They don't memorize it. Okay.
They use the music, but fortunately, some of the singers that we've been working with, like Christina Sabo, Carla Huhtinen, and Keith Klassen, Peter McGillivray, they're fantastic singers who are able to learn music, sight read music, and both do that and understand the style and what they need to bring in terms of their own vocalism and their own body in creating a character.
That is so cool. So,
in the sight reading process.
wow. So this is really mashing together an opera in lightning time. And then what happens to the finished productions?
Often they'll get performed because there's another program they usually put on a few months later called opera briefs, where those same scenes are staged.
Hmm.
Sometimes the actual scene is completely shelved, but at the same time, the working relationship between the composer and the librettist might grow into something larger, like a work for the theater, or it might even grow into a working relationship that creates an entire opera.
So are the composers and librettists, can any composer, any librettist apply for this workshop, or are they hand selected by
They're
another
usually
team?
hand selected. I don't know. I think they might be doing one next summer, but I haven't got any details on that yet. Usually they'll have a call for composers and librettists. Often they'll just select them because they wanted to work with specific people.
And this is kind of a neat way to, so to speak, vet out their work to see, if there's a relationship worth pursuing after seeing him in this crazy laboratory experiment.
For sure. And it's kind of like, if you're a writer and you want to write a novel,
Yeah.
and if you're a composer, one of the great holy grails is to write an opera. But it's not just like you sit down and write it. You have to work with a librettist, and you need a working text that you can set to music. So you need a dramatic scenario. You have to know how singers work, how orchestras work, and you have to know what to write for piano in the first stage. So it's a huge skill set.
And so what are you doing when they're having this? Well, so I assume that you're the pianist that plays through these scores that are put together in lightning time.
I don't play through for as many productions for the company as I used to do because I'm so busy and I'm out of town a lot. But I have coached productions before, and I do sometimes if the finished product has piano in it. Sometimes I'll play for their shows as well.
Now, we're recording this interview in November 2015. The Collaborative Piano blog is celebrating its 10th birthday, so
yay!
Congratulations!
Thank you, thanks, Hugh.
Oh well,
it's been a long time. Sadly, I don't have enough time to write because I've gotten so exceptionally busy over the last few years. But at the same time, I do try to keep it up, and it's been such a fantastic vehicle for me meeting so many people and so many opportunities that have presented themselves. But at the same time, I'm also honored above all else that so many pianists have had an introduction to the profession and that they've been able to find their own calling through the stuff I've written on the blog. And for example, finding whether they want to go into opera or chamber music, what programs to go to. I'm always trying to keep abreast of those in one of my degree programs articles. And for example, what's the entire skill set of a collaborative pianist? What are things you can do professionally as a collaborative pianist? And I was able to very early on catalog that, and I'm glad that it's continually evolving and that people are still finding those resources helpful in their own careers.
Let's return back to your life as a musician. What do you enjoy most about playing collaborative piano music?
For sure. The real benefits for me are, I really love the repertoire. On the one hand, there's music I love that's just fantastic, and I'll do everything I can to keep on playing it. But at the same time, I like working with certain people. And really, really committed singers, committed instrumentalists, there's nothing like it. And that's what brings me back to it, and those are the rewards for me. And I don't do as much collaborative playing as I used to, since I have such a busy teaching schedule. So I'm able to pick and choose the stuff I really want to do. And for me, that's the reward.
Oh, lovely.
Right now.
Now, even though collaborative pianists in general don't share the limelight with the soloists they support, of course, you are a shining example of the exception. There are a few legendary exceptions in the classical music field. One of the first collaborative pianists that comes to my mind is Gerald Moore, the pianist for the legendary singer Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau.
Nacht und Wind. Es ist der Vater mit seinem Kind. Hat den Knaben wohl in den Arm. Fasst ihn sicher, hält ihn warm.
Another one is Samuel Sanders. I believe he was the one who came up with the term originally collaborative piano, isn't he?
Yeah, and I got an
Yeah.
interesting story. I talked to Margot Garrett in Vancouver for the Vancouver International Song Institute a couple of years ago, and she had an incredible story about how the name came to be. It's when Sam Sanders was starting an accompanying department at Juilliard,
Mhm.
he didn't want it to be a separate department from the piano department, which is what it might have been if it were the accompanying department, and he didn't want it to be a ghetto. And this is my recollection of the conversation with Margot, is that he wanted to be part of it, so he had to add piano into it. And so, which is why he came up with the title collaborative piano, so that it could still be part of the conversation of the piano department within the conservatory, within Juilliard.
How cool. And just a side note, Samuel Sanders has been the pianist for Itzhak Perlman for many, many years. Now, who are some of your other favorite
Yeah.
collaborative pianists?
Oh, before I get into that, I just want to say one of the things that we learned from Gerald Moore is that everyone always asked him, well, so who do you work for? And one of the things he said, they said, well, I work for myself. And you could, and with Gerald Moore, we first came to understand that an accompanist / collaborative pianist wasn't necessarily somebody that was associated with somebody else.
Yeah.
That the collaborative pianist was an artist in their own right.
Yes.
And he was able to demonstrate that both as a pianist himself and as a writer, to really communicate what went into the art. And he's one of the first people that did it exceptionally well, that he could bring it to a tremendous amount of people.
You know, I did a recital in Wigmore Hall in London once, and I distinctly remember backstage they have a Gerald Moore dressing room. I thought that was so lovely. They actually dedicated one of the rooms to Gerald Moore, if I recall correctly. Yes. So yeah, he did so much to elevate the craft and the recognition for collaborative pianists. Any other collaborative pianists that you want to make a shout out to?
I mean, there's so many that have been so influential to me, and none more than Jean Barr, my teacher at the Eastman School. I mean, she really taught me the craft more than any other. And not just that, but how to navigate the profession in an intelligent way. And she really helped me to get my act together, was influential to me and to so many other people. And she really brought the art of accompanying collaborative piano to a very high level, both within the institution and in the profession. and and just the body of educators. And I'll always be indebted to Gene Barr. I mean, if you're listening, yeah, I love you. You know, you've done so much for me. And another person that before I met Gene was Rena Sharon. And what Rena brought was a sensitivity to the text, both in the music and in poetry and art song. And she really helped me to understand just the transcendent ability of art and what the pianist's responsibility is with that transcendence. And that's something that, I mean, I'll never forget. And fortunately, Irina is still, in Vancouver, she started an art song festival, and she's training so many fantastic pianists. I mean, it was great that I was able to work with her for those years in the 80s.
Wonderful.
Other pianists, I think Martin Katz must be mentioned. Fantastic teacher. I actually had I actually studied with him for 2 months. For I guess about 2 or 3 weeks at the Academy of the West in Santa Barbara in 1989. And he was just an enormous influence on so many people. Fantastic. One of the great collaborative pianists. And he also has a book that you should mention on the program notes. It's called The Complete Collaborator, that I think is the best book in existence on the art and craft of collaborative piano. And he talks about so many different skills, about working with people, the repertoire, orchestral reductions. That his book is the best one. That's like the starting place that I think people should have in terms of the art and the craft.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to try to see if we can include that in the show notes. So,
if you could find a link, that would be great.
Wonderful. Now, you have a fascination, it seems, with the learning process, given all the things that you've done and attempted and accomplished. And I was listening to a wonderful interview you gave with Colin Thompson on the Modern Musician podcast about the importance of constantly upgrading your skills. As collaborative pianists, the nature of our work really forces us to be immersed in learning new music constantly from a vast repertoire of vocal and instrumental literature. I'm wondering, what learning skills have you parlayed from your experience as a musician into other facets of life to help you learn things faster, more effectively, and perhaps even more fearlessly?
Yeah. Well, I think there's no other thing that I've learned more is that then the learning never stops. It's not like you get a degree, you learn the skills, and you work. If you're a musician, one of the things about being a musician is that it's never over. You're always going to be learning more. And no matter how well somebody plays, there's always a next step. There's always there's always something higher that you could do. Which is why I think you see musicians that keep on teaching and performing into their 80s and 90s.
Very true. Yeah.
Like if you think of like Rubinstein, Horowitz, Aaron Rosen is another great example. Zvi Zeitlin, and a lot of those musicians have such an incredible sense of youth, even when they're in their 70s, 80s, or even in their 90s.
Oh, my piano teacher, Eleanor Sokoloff, is 101, and she's still teaching at Curtis.
No kidding. That's amazing.
She is sharp, incredible clarity of mind. Amazing.
I was doing an opera production with Nicholas Goldschmidt, who died. I think he was around 96 when he died. And in the middle of a rehearsal, he would scream at these singers at the top of his voice. He's like, I can sing with more energy than you, and I am 95. My goal in life is that to be able to yell that to somebody when I'm that age.
Oh, Chris, you've brought out such an amazing point. It really is the love of learning, really, no matter what field you're in. But music seems to be such a wonderful medium and catalyst for that mindset, yeah?
For sure. And the teachers I most admire are not necessarily, I admire them not necessarily because they're really good, it's because they changed and they got better and they learned new things. And often the things they learned were not the things that they expected to learn at a younger age.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to your example, here, not only were you a wonderful musician, but you taught yourself how to blog, you taught yourself how to code, you've constantly been, I was reading some other things and listening to your interviews, that you taught yourself how to do accounting, you learn languages. Your life is an example of this lifelong love of learning.
Yep. And if classical music is to survive, the people that are doing it have to learn what they need to learn in order to succeed
Yes.
and in order to bring the profession to the next level.
Chris, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It has been such a delight speaking with you, and I hope you'll come back again.
Thanks, Hugh. I mean, it's been such a pleasure.
This episode of A Musical Life has been brought to you by Rocket French, the award-winning language learning course used by over 1 million people today. As Chris mentioned, some of the world's most beautiful art songs were written by French composers such as Claude Debussy, Gabriel Fauré, and Maurice Ravel. By learning the language of these masters, you'll gain a deeper insight into the meaning behind their music. Each level of Rocket French has over 60 hours of audio-style lessons. Each level also has over 60 hours of language and culture lessons, where you'll not only discover the mechanics of the language, but also access audio tracks of thousands of common words and phrases. Rocket French's lessons are designed so you can learn during your commute to work, or anytime that you're on the go, using your Mac, PC, or mobile device with the Android or iOS app. One of the coolest features is Rocket Record, a voice recognition tool that lets you record yourself saying any of the thousands of words and phrases in every course. You'll gain the benefit of speaking out loud and be able to improve your pronunciation and accent. Plus, you'll have unlimited 24/7 lifetime online access to a team of language teachers, native speakers, and fellow language enthusiasts who will answer all your language questions and be with you every step of the way. Visit amusicallife.com/French to start your free trial lessons today. That's amusicallife.com/French. I also want to thank SiteGround, the web hosting company that I use to run the website for this show. When I created this podcast, I knew it was critical to have a great website to host it, and that meant using a great web host. Thanks to my experience co-founding Airturn, I had already researched all the top web hosts and even worked with a few of them for a while. But they really disappointed me with some major outages that lasted for days and customer support that didn't deliver as promised. I finally ended up using SiteGround, and they were fantastic, giving me a super fast website with super fast customer support and rock-solid reliability. So of course, that's the web host I use now for A Musical Life. With their one-click WordPress installation feature, you can have your website up and running in minutes. And if you need any help along the way, their chat and phone services are available 24/7, and they never keep you waiting. It's actually pretty amazing. Visit amusicallife.com/website and make that amazing website today with SiteGround. Once again, that's amusicallife.com/website. Visit Chris's blog at collaborativepiano.com. And for links to all the music featured in this episode, be sure to visit the show notes at amusicallife.com. You can leave a comment or send me your feedback by email at stories@amusicallife.com. I'd love to hear from you. If you like this show, please tell a friend or share a link on Facebook or Twitter. Be sure to subscribe to A Musical Life through iTunes or Stitcher or with your favorite podcast playing app. And consider posting a review on iTunes by going to amusicallife.com/review. I'd really appreciate that. Our show's associate producer is Allison Pokris, and Paul Sung provided production assistance. Until next time, I'm Hugh Sung, and I wish you a musical life.